Every person's story has something to teach us. How others view life, how obstacles are overcome, how joy is felt, how fears are faced, how love is expressed. The Matters of Faith podcast explores individual stories of people's lives and how faith plays a part. It may not be your story, but it may help shape yours. And now, Matters of Faith with your host, Jay Wilburn.
You have found the Matters of Faith podcast on Project Entertainment Network with your host, Jay Wilburn. This is episode 188, and I have Wesley Southard standing by, who we're going to talk to in just a moment. I am going to talk about him now, though. Wesley has a number of books that I've recommended highly. One for the Road is an award-winning book that was the first I'd read from him. He has a short story collection called Resisting Madness that made one of my recommendation lists. He and Summer Cannon have written Slaves to Gravity, which I just wildly enjoyed, and I believe is starting to get some of the attention it deserves. I'm actually going to have Summer on an episode here very soon, so I'm looking forward to talking to both of them about that novel. And then Cruel Summer is one of the latest that's come out, and we'll get some details on that as well. Before we get into all that, I want to talk about our advertiser. Our sponsor for this episode is the Dirty Deeds crime fiction series by Armand Rosamilia. When I asked him what he wanted me to say about it, he said just talk about it because I have recommended it a lot. Dirty Deeds is a great crime fiction series. It starts out as if it's going to be pretty dark, but then right at the very beginning there's a twist that turns it into something else. It's a series I would recommend to anybody. Occasionally I'll want to read a thriller that's long. Some of them get up to 200 and 300 pages long, and sometimes I'm in the mood for that. But the Dirty Deeds series is much more concise. There's no wasted pages. All the action and characters move straight through. And so these are shorter reads that you can get through quickly. They're up to book 8. I just finished book 6 and I'm starting book 7. So I'm going to get caught up too, and would love for you guys to join in with me and then be able to talk about that as well. So we appreciate the Dirty Deeds series and Armand Rosamilia's support of the podcast. If you're interested in advertising on the podcast, you can email me at mattersoffaith@jwilburn.com. And now we'll get into the rest of the episode. This is the Matters of Faith podcast on Project Entertainment Network. My guest today is Wesley Southard. Welcome to the program, Wesley.
Hey, Jay. Thanks for having me, man.
I'm real excited to talk to you. We chat occasionally at conventions, and we've known each other a little while and have been kind of publishing in the same circles for a very long time. Before we get into your writing, which I definitely want to talk about, I just want to kind of run through your background in a sort of a similar way we do with other guests. Is there a point where you kind of remember your first sort of connection or sort of an impact that maybe faith or religion or spirituality had on you, either positive or negative?
I'm not sure. I grew up Lutheran. My mother raised me Lutheran. My dad was Catholic when he grew up, but he kind of grew out of that. Yeah, I was raised Lutheran and did my communion classes, and we went every Sunday, but I just remember there was a point where I just wasn't really enjoying it anymore. I just wasn't really enjoying going to church anymore. I wasn't really getting anything out of it like I guess others were, so I just I think once I hit kind of late teens, I was just like, I don't really want to do this anymore. This isn't really doing it for me, and I just kind of stopped going, you know.
What was your family's reaction to that sort of, I guess, either decision or drifting away process?
I mean, my dad was kind of not really doing it that much either, and my mom was still kind of going a little bit, but at the same time, like, it's just like, I don't know. I think even she's kind of stopped going too, and I think a lot of my family stopped going to that church, and they had problems. I think after our old pastor retired, which he was actually really, really cool. I liked him, Pastor Carey. He was cool, but and he and his wife were very, very nice people. I think they got a new, younger guy in after he retired, and I think a lot of people were having issues with that particular pastor because he kind of was a lot of hell and damnation and a lot of like, well, we don't like gay people and we don't like this and we don't like that, and he was just, and I think that turned a lot of people off. I know it turned my grandmother off because I know that she stopped going to that church and she actually went across town to another Lutheran church and started going to that one because of that. So yeah, there wasn't any like negative reaction necessarily. I just think even my mom stopped kind of going too. So Yeah, I guess it's just never really been like a huge thing after, I don't know, mid-teens, I guess, for me.
Where do you sort of define yourself at this point in your life, sort of from, I guess, the spectrum that goes from theist all the way to atheist? Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum personally?
More or less agnostic. It's just, it's one of those things where it just, I don't know. I honestly don't think about religion that much in my day-to-day life. Um, I mean, it's always there. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to say. I guess just agnostic, more or less.
Hmm.
I feel like that's always. I mean, I kind of have the mindset. If there's something there, cool. If not, cool. I don't know. I just kind of just go day to day and just, hope for the best, I guess.
Right. Now, you were into music before you were pursuing writing. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
What point in your life did that become sort of a pursuit, a dream, sort of a maybe I can achieve this sort of thing in your life?
Well, when I was 12 or 13, I got my first guitar because I was a huge Kiss fan because my dad raised me on classic rock, I mean, Kiss and Zeppelin and AC/DC and Van Halen. Rest in peace, Eddie.
Right,
God,
right.
still then that was yesterday, and I'm still crushed about that. That hurt. Um, yeah, I started playing when I was 13 and was really into it and had a band for a minute, like a hot minute, but that never really went anywhere.
Right.
But I ended up going to school in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Atlanta Institute of Music in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun, but like I think once the music started getting too technical and it stopped being kind of fun because you started to overthink everything and it wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't fun anymore. All I wanted to do was just be in a band. And I remember very specifically being in one of my classes and the teacher asked each and every one of us, uh, well, what do you want to do with your career? Like, what's your ultimate goal? And they were doing the circle, and everybody's like, oh, I want to be like a session musician, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And it was these very lofty, kind of like very centered goals. And I was the only person in the room who was just like, I just want to live on a tour bus the rest of my life. And everybody thought I was the weird one for some reason because I was like, isn't that why we're here to like learn how to be like musicians? Like this, I thought this was like what this was, but I think a lot of people just wanted to be like guitar teachers and stuff. I don't know. I just kind of realized like after I graduated, I wasn't happy, and I moved back home. Unfortunately, I thought I was going to live down there the rest of my life, which I do. I love Atlanta a lot. It's a great city, despite the god awful traffic.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, seriously, side note, it is the worst traffic in the country. I've driven in New York City, I've driven in LA, and I've driven in Chicago, and Atlanta takes the cake for the worst traffic in the country. Um, but yeah, and then I moved back home and I tried to start another band, and it just wasn't going anywhere, and I just was getting so fed up with not finding the people that I wanted to sync up and start, something real, and I just wasn't having it. And that's kind of when I discovered writing and how much I really enjoyed that. And yeah, and not to mention it's more or less a solitary act, so I didn't have to worry about what other people were doing. I didn't have to rely on others. It's just me. It's me and my creative output in my brain and nobody else's. So yeah, that's kind of how it came for me.
Now, was writing a part of your life any before that, or was that sort of the epiphany moment?
A little bit. I mean, I wrote a lot when I was younger, but it wasn't anything serious. It was just kind of like kind of half-ass rip-offs of scary stories to tell in the dark. 'Cause I was really big into those when I was young. I wrote a little bit in high school here and there, but it wasn't anything serious either. But I kind of had this epiphany moment. I did actually have an epiphany moment, weirdly enough. I don't know if a lot of people can say that, but I was reading really heavily at the time back in like '07, '06, '07, and I was collecting a lot of books and stuff, and I was a huge Brian Keene fan. And I went and I was living in Indiana at the time, where I'm from, and I went and saw or I met Brian at a convention in Indianapolis called MoCon, which is the convention that Maurice Broadus runs.
Right.
And I went up there and I met him, and I just remember how cool he was. And he didn't. I didn't have to come up to him to sign the books. I just sat there like in the back table nervously with a stack of his books, and I was just kind of like waiting for the right moment to go up to him. And then he just saw me across the room and just made a beeline for me and sat down at the table with me and started talking to me, and he was signing the books, and I was just like, whoa, like, because at the time he was just like a rock star to me, like, holy shit, like,
Right.
I didn't have to do anything. This guy came to me super nice, and I just remember sitting there afterwards, before I left, and just looking at all the writers and how cool everyone was, and I just remember thinking, man, I wonder if this is something you can do. Can you do this? Do you have the stamina to sit and write stuff and try to make this your craft? And I came home and thought more about it, and I had this. I was hanging out with my buddy, my best friend back home, and we got to talking, and I was kind of throwing him this idea of this novel idea that I'd had that I was thinking about, and so we kind of shot the idea back and forth and kind of had it grow and stuff, and then that's how The Betrayed, my first novel, started. And 13 years later, here I am, still putting stuff out, still working, and this is what I want to do with my life.
Now, I've been writing a little while, and I was looking back at some old anthologies, and there was one like For the Love, exposure anthology that was sort of an extreme theme. And I was looking back at a story in that, and I saw your name in the table of contents. And I was like, oh, wow, that was like it wasn't the first thing I published, but it was pretty close to that. So,
Yeah.
like, when was your first short stories actually hitting anthologies?
Oh man. God, I remember selling my first one in 2010, and I think the first one actually came out in 2011. Okay, here's a story. Here's a good story.
Right.
If you've read Resisting Madness, my short story collection, like you talked about at the beginning, I talk about in the story notes for a story called By the Throat, about how that was supposed to be my first published short story, and it technically was. I had sold a couple of others. I sold a short story about like in 2009 or 2010 to an anthology that ended up shitting the bed and dying. Like the whole press just died. So I ended up selling, By the Throat to a publisher, and I was going to have copies that I was going to take with me to Horror Find in Gettysburg, PA in 2010. Yeah, 2010. Right? 2010 or 2011. I'm looking at the thing on my wall. I think it was 2010 or 2011. It's Horror Find 13. So I was going to have all these copies I was going to sell, my first short story in this anthology, and I got it in the mail. I got my copies in the mail just to find out that the editor had rewritten my story from the first word of the story to the last word. He
Holy
rewrote
smokes.
everything. I lost my shit. I was not, oh man, I freaked out. So I ended up emailing him saying, what gives you the right to do this? Like, and I went off. And he basically countered with, well, what gives you the right to email me back and say all these things? Like, I'm the editor, I have the right to do all this. And, I know people who can prove you wrong and prove me that I'm right because I'm the editor. And I countered back. I said, not according to your contract, because I'm not an idiot. The contract says you can only make minor edits and not without my consent. So yeah, it was back and forth, and then I finally had him just take the story completely out of the anthology. It was awful. It was really, really awful. But I think my very first one was in 2011 from the Big Book of New Horror, Big Book of, yeah, right there, Big Book of New Short Horror from Pill Hill Press.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was with many thanks to Newark. It was a vampire story that I wrote. But yeah, I think that was 2010 or 2011, the first time that came out.
Now, you said Betrayed was your first novel. When did that come out?
So I started writing that in 2007, and it took me about 10 years of refining and editing and writing, and it was a nightmare process. But I ended up putting it out myself in 2017, in I think March of 2017. I tried to look for publishers for it, and I just wasn't having any. Nothing was happening. So I ended up just getting frustrated and putting it out myself, because if you're living for it with a novel for 10 damn years, Uh, I think you just get fed up and just want to put it out and just be done with it.
Right. So 2017 was your first novel publication?
Yes.
Oh wow. Well, and I guess part of it was the process of trying to get that book together individually, but um, generally speaking, why were you able to put out short fiction for so long before you finally were able to land that novel? Do you think?
Well, I did it kind of the ass backwards way to begin with. I started out writing a novel, and like I said, it took. I didn't spend the entire 10 years writing the thing. Like a lot of most of that was editing or just putting it aside on the back burner for a long time. But I mean, it took me a couple of years to actually write, the 82,000 words or whatever it is. But then I had to go back and actually learn how to write short stories afterwards. So yeah, I found a little bit of success writing short stories first, and it took me a lot longer to finally start learning how to write long fiction because I honestly I haven't gone back and reread The Betrayed in a long time,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I want to right now because I'm terrified of what it reads like.
Yeah.
I still sell the book and I still like try to promote it. But honestly, I'm terrified to see how much my style has changed since then because I know it has, and I'm worried that like I'm gonna hate what I read. So I don't know. I want to do something with it eventually where I kind of just put away my insecurities about it and reread it, give it a nice fresh edit, and then get a new cover for it and kind of put it out again because I really still like the idea of the novel a lot, like a lot, a lot. Um, but I think it never really got much attention, like at all. It got good reviews, but it never got much attention. So I'd like to try to get some more eyes on it eventually.
Now, I kind of experienced that too, a little bit more with short stories than with novels, where I'll go back to something I wrote a long time ago, and even if it's good, like if it has some raw qualities to it, there's always something in it that makes me cringe, even if it's just mechanics. Like
Yeah,
I was still putting two spaces after a period or something, and I feel like I'm being attacked by my past self or something. But
yeah.
when you were putting together Resisting Madness, then, which again is a great collection.
Oh, thank
Did
you.
you experience any of that at all, where you go back to visit old stories and you get that kind of that thing you're fearing about looking back at your first novel?
A little bit. There's really only one old short story that I had previously published that I decided to leave out of the collection just because I like the idea of the story and I still remember writing it very vividly. Some of those short stories I don't remember writing. Like I remember writing it obviously, but I don't remember like the headspace I was in when I was writing it. I just
Yeah.
remember writing it and it coming out. But there was one in particular that was very juvenile, I guess. It just wasn't a great story, and I was reading it and I was kind of cringing. I was just like, I think I'm just gonna leave this one out. I'm not happy with this one anymore. Um, I'm still pretty happy with most of the stories in there. And I mean, like I said, my first short story, with many thanks to Newark. I remember writing that one and not and I had this really cool grand idea of like a bigger like more stuff happening on the plane as everything's happening in the story, but I just didn't have, I guess, the I just didn't have it in me to get out what I wanted to get out. I was rushing it too much. If I were to rewrite that story now, I would still have the same beginning and end, but the whole middle would be completely different. I think
Right.
I have a lot more confidence. I didn't have the confidence at the time. Same thing with The Betrayed. There's some stuff I wish I would have done at the end of that book. I still like the ending. That I have more confidence now, and I'm not having to second guess myself. And I think that's the most important thing of growth is you're not second guessing yourself too much anyway. But you have a lot more confidence the further along in your career you go. But yeah, there's not a whole lot in that collection that I'm just like cringeworthy. I don't think. I mean, not nothing's coming up off the top of my head, but yeah, I still really love that collection a
Yeah,
lot.
I do too. I've really enjoyed it, and I recommended it a lot. Now, I knew you've been writing a while, but realizing your first novel was in 2017, and then where I see you now in 2020, where you're getting special edition hardbacks and you're getting books translated into foreign markets. Now, it's not overnight because you started a long time ago, but 2017 to 2020, that's a pretty quick ascension. Those are some goals that I haven't even gotten close to yet. And again, I just want to say I'm very impressed by that.
Thank you.
Looking at yourself as a writer now, being able to achieve those things, and then kind of looking back at your process on a novel that took you 10 years, like what's it like for you to be at this spot and see and sort of having to take in your own growth as an author?
I realize that I'm a very, very fortunate person. I try not to take anything for granted. I mean, I know I'm lucky enough to know a lot of people in the business, but I don't. I try not to use that to my advantage as much. I think it's very easy to take advantage of knowing, specific people, and trying to get things out of that. I've never done that. I have, from day one, I've always said that no matter who I know, I'm not going to take advantage of their friendship to get ahead in this business. I want to get ahead in this business on my own merit. And so far, I have stuck with that. And there's only been one time where I've had to use a couple of people's names in order to get the attention of a publisher, and it's only because I didn't know this publisher, and I asked permission from these two people if I could use their name in the email to kind of get the publisher's attention, and they were okay with it. They were perfectly fine with it. But even when I did it, and even though it's completely worked out for me and everything's been good, it still kind of made me icky. It made me feel very icky, and I didn't like it, and I still kind of cringe about it. I mean, there's not much I can do. It's one of those things. Sometimes you just have to. No, it's been a crazy ride, man. I always, especially with like the hardcover stuff, I mean, I don't know if you can see it in the video and stuff here. I mean, I've got signed limited edition hardcovers all around me in the office, and I was such a big fan coming into the genre of a lot of the small press publishers like Delirium and Bloodletting and Cemetery Dance and Thunderstorm and Cargo Cult Press and Sideshow Press and just all these presses, and I just wanted to be one of those authors that worked with those presses. I wanted it so bad. I love those presses so much, and to be able to I now have like 3 signed limited edition hardcovers from Thunderstorm, and it's wild because I was thinking about it as I was opening up my package the other day with my new one, and I just kept thinking about it. I was like, holy crap, like I'm actually doing this. Like I'm finally achieving what I wanted to, and it's so neat. And all it does is it just makes you want more. It just makes you want to keep doing it, and that's kind of what drives me is just to keep putting cool stuff out. I just want cool stuff out there, and I want other people to be just as excited to get. I know it sounds kind of lame saying it the way I'm about to say it, but like I want people to be excited to get the new Wesley Southard hardcover, or like the new Wesley Southard book. I mean, that's because that's what you're working for. You're working for people to get excited about your new release. It doesn't even matter what the release is about. It's just that you got a new book coming out. That's an instant pre-order. That's what you build up to in this business. And I think, and I don't know where I'm at in that process, but right now that's what I'm building toward, and it's been a fun ride. I'm really enjoying myself.
Was there any part of you that, like, when that first hardcover was coming out, that you feared like nobody's going to buy this?
Well, what's funny about the first hardcover was it was through like all 3 of the hardcovers I have right now are from Thunderstorm Books, and the first 2 of them were actually from a series that they have called the Black Voltage Private Reserve series, which is already pre-sold out to like their subscribers. So they were both kind of like easy sellouts because they were already going to sell out. But my thing was, I really wanted my next one, Cruel Summer, when that was going to come out, I really wanted that one to be from the regular Black Voltage series, which means that one is just going straight to the public and not to like the subscribers. That's the one that I was wondering, what's going to happen with this, because this isn't going to subscribers. This is going to the public. So what's going to happen here? Is this book going to just sit there, like all 45 copies going to sit there for months at a time, not being sold? Is it going to sell out? I have no idea. And I remember it was the night after the Splatterpunk Awards, like I guess, 2 months ago. So that was a Saturday night. Sunday morning, I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I just kind of rolled over and looked at my phone for a second, and I got an email from Paul saying that the book was up for pre-order. I was like, oh, okay. I kind of forgot about it from, because everything that happened the night before. And then I got up a couple hours later, and Paul told me it was already sold out. And he said it sold out in less than 4 hours. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, that's pretty cool. So yeah, that got that fear, kind of killed that fear. So that was really neat.
While we're talking about Cruel Summer, like where is that now? Like when's like paperback and other types of editions coming out?
So Death's Head Press is doing the paperback and ebook. We're waiting right now on the cover. So I can't say much about the cover right now, but we're still waiting on the artist to kind of do a little bit of rendering on the cover. I'm hoping this month. Not sure yet. I think Jared wants to get it out this month, next month at the latest. So I'm hoping within this month, because that'd be really cool. But yeah, that's where that's at right now.
One for the Road was actually the first book of yours that I read not that long ago, but again, recommended it a lot. Then it went on to get nominated for an award, and then it went on to win an award in a pretty stiff category.
Yeah.
When you were looking at the names in that category, were you thinking, "Oh, I got a chance here"? Or was it? Did you recognize how stiff that competition was?
Oh, I mean, shit, dude, I was up against Edward Lee. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the stiffest. I was convinced that Lucas Mangum's book, Saint Sadist, was going to win, because I loved that book. That was one of my favorites last year. I
like
absolutely,
that too.
Oh, it's a great book. I was absolutely 100% convinced that one was going to win. And I remember sitting right here in this chair watching the award ceremony, and it got up to collection, and I lost Resisting Madness against Brian Smith's collection. And I just kind of was sitting here, and I lost that one, and I just remember kind of putting my head down, and I reached up onto next to me, and I grabbed my speech that I had like pre-written if I won for that one, and I just kind of crumpled it up and just tossed it across the room to the trash can. And I just sat back and I went, well, I didn't win collection, so there's no way in hell that I'm winning novella. So I was like, there's no way, because I was just absolutely convinced that Lucas was going to win, because like I said, like that book was just so good, and just the praise all around, like the reading community for that book was just amazing, and deservedly so. But then when Raph, I think it was Raph, actually said that I had won, I was in shock. I couldn't believe it, and I don't know if anybody was actually watching the ceremony when they actually brought me onto the video feed. Like I just remember I was sitting here like this, like my hands were up and my head was like just like this, and it was genuine shock. I couldn't believe it, and yeah, it was crazy. It's still hard to believe that I won, but like I think really everybody that was nominated was just fantastic. I mean, Ed Lee, who else was nominated?
I can't remember offhand, but it was just a powerhouse of books.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned Saint Sadist, which I really liked, and your book I really liked too. But it may have been the stiffest category, because it was all powerhouse novels and names.
Not the novel. I thought that the novel, best novel category, in my opinion, was the stiffest, because man, that was brutal. And you had Kenzie Jennings.
That was a big one too.
Man, Triana, Toxic Love, which was one of my favorites last year. Toxic Love was insane. Christine Morgan's, Max Booth.
Yeah.
I can't remember who else, but yeah, that one was the one that I was like, I genuinely have no idea who's going to win this one, and I'm thrilled for Christine, because Lake House Inferno was so good, and I'm so happy that she won. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was cool, and her
reaction. And her reaction was just the same as mine. I remember they brought her on, and I'm still shaking from mine, and she was just like, "What's going on? I can't believe it."
Yeah.
Just like, oh my god.
it was a fun watch as a
Yeah.
fan and a reader. Um, Speaking of that, how different? Because you travel to a good bit of conventions, so that's kind
Mhm.
of part of your author profile, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then that whole experience was virtual, which was still fun for me. I particularly liked that convention,
Yeah.
and some of the others. That one stands out for me.
Yeah.
But how's that been for you as sort of a fan, reader, and author, having sort of your schedule wiped away by the plague this year?
It's been absolutely brutal. I love going to conventions. I love traveling. Traveling is one of my favorite things in the world to do, and I'm one of those weird people that actually really enjoys flying. Like I really enjoy it. Just not necessarily the process of flying, but I love just the idea of flying because I just know that I'm getting out of town, and it's great. Like I love love to travel, and this year has been an absolute nightmare. And I don't know what next year is going to look like. I'm looking at a 2021 conventions paper that I got tacked up on my wall right now, and I got about 10 different places that I want to go to. And that all even depends on whether or not my work will let me have off for them. But it's sucked. Like this year has absolutely sucked. Like Killer Con getting canceled. Like I do Scares of Care every year,
Yeah.
and that was a huge bummer. But KillerCon, I had probably the best time I've ever had at a convention at KillerCon last year. KillerCon was so much fun. I loved the people. I loved how small the convention was. Even regardless if I wasn't selling that much while I was there, that really wasn't the point of KillerCon. It was such a unique show where I just felt like I knew everybody, and even the people that I didn't know, I got to know that weekend. And I wouldn't trade 2019 KillerCon for anything. It was so much fun, and everybody hung out with everybody.
Yeah.
It wasn't people breaking off into their cliques or their groups. Everybody was either upstairs, like at night. Everybody was either upstairs in the convention suite, hanging out and having fun, or they were downstairs smoking. So it was just basically those two groups. And God, man, I had so much fun. Like, it just, man, I was so just devastated when KillerCon was canceled this year, and I completely understand why,
Yeah.
But man, that was brutal. That was brutal. But yeah, I'm hoping next year we'll start having cons again. I mean, and like I said, I have several of them I want to do, but we'll see like what's actually happening or not. I already have. I've already bought tickets for StokerCon in Denver, so that's happening. John Wayne Comunale and I are going to do Days of the Dead in Atlanta. At the end of February. So I'm really looking forward to that because I haven't done Days of the Dead yet as like a vendor. I've been to Days of the Dead before, but I've never done it as a vendor. And so everything after that, I just got to kind of see what's happening. But I'm keeping my eyes open.
Now I've been following you online through everything that's been going on this past year, and
Mm.
your work situation was really impacted by the pandemic. Not just once, but you'd get kind of a punch and then a backup punch, and then things would smooth out for a while, and then you'd be hit again. So you
Yeah.
kind of have a strange situation where, arguably, you look back maybe 12 months, 18 months, you're looking at one one of your best years professionally as a writer, but
Mm.
then at the same time, the day job seemed to be conspiring to try to destroy you. How
Feels
how
about
how
that
has that
way.
experience been? And then, like, I suppose, what have you been going through this year with sort of that push pull of highs and lows?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like this, despite the shitty circumstances of the world right now, I'm having probably the best year professionally I've ever had. I've only had one book come out this year so far, but I've had sold, several short stories, and I got the novel that just. Oh, I guess I do have two books came out this year. I keep forgetting about Cruel Summer. Um, yeah, professionally, it's been an incredible year, but like personally, like my job, like I was on furlough from mid March to the end of May, and I couldn't get my unemployment to work.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was brutal. That was real hard. But then once that started working, it was fine. In fact, after after a while, like, well, for like my writing got kind of put off from the whole thing too, like a lot of people's did, because you don't know what to do with yourself. You're worrying about money and you're worrying about everything else, and you just like the last thing you want to do is write, even though you're still thinking. Even though you can't turn your writer brain off, you're always thinking about stuff. Like you couldn't just physically make yourself sit down and write. And I spent like the first month of that furlough just kind of floating around the house like a ghost. You just couldn't figure out what to do with myself, and I just was just eating too much and watching too much Netflix or whatever. And then once I got back to my job, then they started having like layoffs again, and I got moved out of my department that I'd been in for like 2 years, and got moved to the assembly line at work. So then I've spent the last couple of months on the assembly line at work, and it's been really hard and very, very physical and not fun. So yeah, it's been an interesting year outside of the writing business.
Looking back at your work history, have you sort of, and I kind of sense it from you from some of the things that you posted about, but do you consider yourself kind of a blue collar guy that's just you go to work and hammer it out, and then you come home to do the stuff that you really want to do and that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've been blue collar, yeah, pretty much since the beginning. I mean, I know I'm not that old. I'm only 33, but yeah, pretty much. I kind of just go to work and just do what I got to do, basically just to get home and do what I really want to do. Um, I joke with my coworkers and my boss, but it's not even really a joke. It's the truth. Like I work for my breaks. I just want to I work to the next break so I can go sit and read, and then I work until 3:45 until I can get off work so I can actually come home so I don't have to think about work anymore.
Right.
So yeah, work to me is just something that I have to do to pay the bills. It's not who I am. I wish I had a job that I really loved. That would be great. I'd love to get up in the morning and be like excited to go somewhere, but that's not possible. So yeah, or at least not right now. So maybe one day, but yeah, right now it's just it pays the bills.
Now, since you kind of went through all that and you sort of had a dry spell with the writing, has it changed the way you write, or did you sort of get back into your mode once you got past that furlough?
Oh, yeah, I got back into it after about a month. Cause I was on furlough for about 2.5 months. So the first month it was really hard, but like once I just kind of pushed through it and was like, you know what, I don't know when you don't know when you're going to go back to work. Take advantage of this because there's no telling if something like this will ever happen again.
Right.
And you take advantage of this because you have a lot of time during the day where you could be doing something and being productive, and this could pay off later, and it is now. So I spent that whole time finishing Cruel Summer and working on like 3 or 4 short stories, and 3 of those short stories sold already and should be
Wow.
coming out literally like within the next month and month and a half. And then Cruel Summer is already coming out in hardcover. It'll be out in paperback. So yeah, I took advantage. I was lucky enough to finally push past that mental roadblock, and I just got to work, and now it's starting to pay off. So that's really nice.
When did you and Summer start working on Slaves to Gravity?
Oh boy. So we started like actually writing it last February, I think, but we were discussing it a few months beforehand because it was an idea that I had initially, even years and years ago. Because a lot of like my ideas, I end up sitting in my head for a very very long time and kind of like fermenting, like
Mm-hmm.
like alcohol or something, or like a pickle, and my pickle ideas. They sit in my head for a really long time, and that was one in particular where I didn't necessarily have a whole story idea. I had the end of the book in my head. I had literally the last chapter. If you have read the book,
Yeah.
the last chapter of that book was an idea that was just in my head that I was like, I don't know what the hell this is, but I want to know what the story of this is real bad because this could be really cool, whatever the hell this is, and I want to know what's leading up to that. So I thought I've been wanting to co-write something with someone for a long time because I did it one other time, and it was actually a novelette that's in Resisting Madness, a short story called Home Invasion that I wrote with a friend of mine, Nikki McKenzie. And I had a lot of fun doing it last time, and I wanted to do it again. And I'm a big fan of Summer's writing. Summer Cannon is one of my absolute closest friends since moving out here. I love her to death. We text every day. A lot of the times, if we end up talking for like 3 hours at a time. It's crazy. Um, so I thought, you know what? I'm a big fan of her writing. I'm a big fan of her in general. I'll see if she'd be interested in doing this. And she was, and we got together like, I don't know, a few weeks to a month later or something at like a diner about halfway between our homes because we live about an hour apart. And we got a couple notebooks and we just ate and talked about what we wanted to do. We hashed out some ideas. And yeah, like I think back in last February, we started working on it, finished it about August, I think, because both of us were working on other stuff at the same time. So we were kind of going chapter to chapter, passing it back and forth. And then I think I finished it, like completely finished it last draft by like late September, early October, and then submitted it to Silver Shamrock, who I really wanted to send that to begin with. And then I think we heard from him in late October, I think, or early November. I can't remember which. And he was just like gushing about it. He really, really wanted it. So yeah, it was a quick process once we actually got it going.
It's an amazing book, and it's the kind of book that like, having read it, we could talk about it in depth, but there's no way to do that without spoiling.
Yeah.
How close was it to what you originally thought it was, or even to what you guys outlined in the diner?
So it's really weird. So we knew it was going to be horror because obviously we're horror writers, and we had like what we ended up putting out there is more or less what we wanted, but it started morphing. I remember there was a point about halfway through the book where it started morphing into, man, like science fiction or almost like fantasy science fiction,
Right.
and we kind of called each other and we're like, so are we doing this? Like, are we going sci-fi fantasy in this book? Because neither of us have ever done anything like that. And yeah, we were both like, I guess we're doing this. We're going to give this a shot. And we did. And it took a lot of editing and a lot of back and forth and a lot of like, okay, this is, I think, how we should do this. And I think this is how we should try this. And well, let's tweak that a little bit. And yeah, it was a lot of back and forth and a lot of her like poking holes into the stuff that I was coming up with. And I was like, okay, let's figure out how to patch that over. And yeah, it's a weird book. I really, 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 really love that book a lot. I've noticed a lot of people have said it's not what they thought it was going to be, and I'm just like, you know what, you're right. It's not what I thought it was going to be either. But that's even for the better. I think it's such a unique book, and I've never seen anything like it, at least not in the horror genre. And I think a lot of people really like it, but there's also a lot of people that are just like, I don't know what this is. Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's like you said, the horror is there,
Yeah.
which again would surprise somebody if they came in for sci-fi and fantasy. And then the sci-fi and fantasy is quite unique, in and of itself too. Again, I'm
Yeah.
trying not to give any story details as I'm talking about the
Yeah,
story, but it was almost, and again, like you said, it may have been the middle, but as you're going through, and it's part of what makes the twists work too, I think. But as you're going through, it almost achieves sort of like transcendent storytelling and that kind of thing, where you feel yourself kind of elevated with the characters and that kind of thing too.
no pun intended.
Yeah, yeah. Did you feel like you were writing something special when you hit that moment, or was it sort of like I don't know where this is going type
I
thing?
think so. I think without giving any spoilers away, I think it was the chapter that I wrote where she went to New York City. I think is where it really changed because I mean that was kind of a big reveal chapter to begin with. That was and stuff that happened right there at the end of that chapter. I remember writing that part and thinking, oh, okay, we're going real big here. We're going there's something even bigger here than there was before. And yeah, it's I don't know what else to say. It was such a unique experience writing it, and I know there's been some reviews that have asked like, oh, okay, so this is like the beginning of something, right? Like this is there's more to this, and I'm thinking like, well, no, I don't think so. I
That's
think this is
interesting.
it. I think. I mean, I don't see there being more. I mean, you've read it, you
Yeah,
know, but it's the reactions for that have been very interesting to say the least.
that's fascinating. Maybe it's just people want more, which is always a good sign.
Well, yeah, that's a good sign. Yeah, absolutely.
What can people expect from you from the future? Do you have anything coming up, anything in the works, or even in the drafting phase that you want to hint about?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, Cruel Summer's coming out. Hopefully within this month or next month. It should be either one of those two. Just look with it within the next 2 months. After that, actually, this next Tuesday is when I have a short story coming out in Midnight in the Pentagram from Silver Shamrock Publishing. That's really cool. That's a short story called My Body. It's like a demons. The whole anthology is about demons and demonology and stuff like that. And this short story is kind of my tribute to my favorite writer ever, Graham Masterton,
Oh wow.
who is also in the anthology with a brand new story. And my story is like right next to his in the table of contents, which Ken kind of worked out for me a little bit since he knew that I'm a huge Masterton fan. So that was
That's
really really
funny.
cool. So that's coming out. There's another short story that hasn't technically been announced yet. I'm thinking it should be out this month in an anthology, but the anthology's only been like announced sort of once, but like very quickly by someone who was kind of like, okay, maybe we shouldn't say anything about that yet, but whatever. So that'll be coming out. Yeah, that'll be coming out here. I think this month, maybe next month. I'm not positive. And then I have a short story in the Frank Michaels Arrington tribute anthology, One of
Mm.
Us, that comes out November 15th, and that's a short story called We Bear All. And I really really like that story a lot because the editor worked with me a lot to get that story to where it's actually at right now. Because when I originally sent it to him, he liked it, but it just wasn't working, and I got kind of frustrated with that because I was like, well, I don't know what to do with this then. Like, I don't know what you want from me. So we were kind of went back and forth, and he really helped me flesh this out and made it a much much better story. But as far as longer work, right now, I have a novella that I have co-written with somebody that I don't think the co-writer wants me to say who he is.
Oh wow.
Um, he hasn't announced it, so I guess I can't technically announce it. But we wrote a novella together over the summer, and it's actually at a publisher right now who's looking at it. I don't know when we'll hear back from them, but hopefully soon. I'm not sure. I don't know. Other than that, that's everything I have at the moment. I just started working on a new novel that I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to get done before StokerCon next year because I'm
Mm.
really wanting to have this done so I can actually do a pitch session for the first time. I've never done one of those.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know who's going to be there. I imagine like Flame Tree and a few others. I don't know who will be there. I just want to try to. I just want to give a shot at pitching something to one of these publishers because I've never done that before, and I really want to try that. And this novel, I want to try to go for a little bit more, not mainstream necessarily, but a little bit more accessible,
Yeah.
but still very much me. So yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. So, and then I've got other stuff that I want to try at. I've got an extreme, like a very extreme horror novel that I kind of started and stopped for the moment, and then I don't know if he'll want me to say this or not, but Lucas Mangum and I have discussed working on something, and I think I don't know when we'll start that or not, but it's going to be very, very cool. I'm really looking forward to that one because he and I talked about it like 2 weekends ago, and I think we're both really stoked about it. So, again, I don't know when we'll even get to start that, but probably early next year or something. But yeah, that's really cool. But yeah, I'm always working on something, man. You got to stay busy.
Yeah. Lucas has done some pretty big collaborations recently.
Oh
He's a
yeah.
good one to work with.
And
Um,
there's a couple other ones that haven't even been announced yet that he's doing that there's one in particular that I'm very excited about that should be really cool.
do you I was actually in wrapping up mode, but I want to ask a couple more questions.
Oh no, go
Do you
for it.
do you find yourself pushed towards extreme writing by nature, or do you naturally sort of spread out into other types of writing?
Um, well, my biggest influences, are obviously I like Brian Keene and J.F. Gonzalez, and I'm a huge Edward Lee fan, and I'm a huge Graham Masterman fan. So those obviously are going to seep into my writing a lot. I, I I like extreme stuff a lot, and I have a lot of fun writing it. But at the same time, I also want to try other things. Like there's a novella that I want to write that's not going to be extreme, even in the least, and I think it's going to be a lot more tame. And even the novel that I'm writing right now, I feel like it could go extreme at times, but I'm going to have to like try to kind of limit myself to what I can do with this one. So yeah, I want to try to be able to do all kinds of things. I mean, even with Slaves to Gravity, I mean, I proved that I can. At least I think I proved that I can. I can try something very very different than what I
Right.
normally do. But I think that's what you should try as even a writer in this genre is to try to do different things. Try to do extreme. Try to do more of a mainstream. Try to do sci-fi horror. Try all the kind of subgenres of this genre and just open yourself up to everything you can and I think that'll make you a better writer in the long run.
All right. Going back to editors, at the beginning of the show, you talked about one of your first editing experiences being terrible, and
Oh,
then
that was a predator.
yeah, and then towards the end, you talked about one that was very positive, that you worked pretty deeply with to completely change a story. Um, what's your like? What does it take for you to have an editor that's willing to that you can work with to make big changes to something like that?
I haven't had a whole lot of like that experience with that short story was very unique because usually, I mean, with a lot of short stories, depending on the market, I guess you send it in, either they like it or they don't, and you just make like minor changes. Well, that one in particular was very different than what I've been used to because I mean, he liked the story, but he wanted more out of it, and he didn't think it was working or there was something missing from it because I guess it was just too linear, it was too straightforward, and he wanted to know a little bit more about other things happening in it, and I got frustrated because I was like, well, I don't know if that's the story or not. But then I gave it a shot, and I was like, oh, okay, that is this story. I like what I'm doing now. So yeah, that was kind of a very unique thing. But a lot of the editing I've been used to is either like early on with these no name, very micro boutique presses
Right.
that are just putting out anthologies over and over. A lot of them aren't even really editing. They'll just take the
Yeah.
story and just throw it in the throw it in the file and just be done with it. I mean, I sold a short story, God, back in like 2011, 2013 or something like that. It's like a brand new. It wasn't even an e-zine. It was like they were just selling like an ebook version of their magazine, and it was the first issue. And I ordered the issue. I couldn't even get a free damn issue of it, but I bought one, and I saw that they didn't take out the underlines in my story because at the time I was always told that if you're doing something that needs italicizing, that you just need to underline it, underline that word, and the editor should go back and italicize it themselves. Well, they didn't do that. They didn't even take out the damn underlines. They left the underlines in the damn file or in the final product, and I was like, this is some like just this is crap. This is absolute crap. And I was so mad about that. And I remember at the time I was just so damn mad at it. But I think a lot. You just hope that like the publishers that you do work with in the presses do have good editing. I know Death's Head has a very good couple of regular editors that they use that they go through everything with a fine tooth comb, which is really great because it seems like no matter how many pre-readers you have, you could have 6 or 7 pre-readers if you want that many, and then it seems like the seventh person is still going to find something that everybody else, missed.
Right.
And that was the funny thing with Cruel Summer. I had like 5 pre-readers, and I thought they found everything. I thought it was as clean as possible. And then, funny enough, Bob Ford, who wrote he wrote the intro for it for the hardcover. He read it and he came to me with like a whole bunch more edits, and I was like, holy shit! And then someone else found more stuff, and I was like, oh my god! Like you can have 10 people read something, and number 11 is still going to find something that the other 10 people missed. It's so frustrating. But yeah, that's one thing. If you're a new author or a newer author, get pre-readers. Pre-readers are very, very important. I know that may not be for everybody. So I know people that don't like pre-readers. I know people that just they don't like that those extra eyes on stuff, and that's that's whatever. But I've always said you need pre-readers. You need other people catching your mistakes and calling you out on it, and asking questions. Wait, this doesn't make sense. Can you elaborate more on this? And I had that. I had that with Cruel Summer. I had 5 different people read it, and I had 5 different people asking questions and finding shit that I missed. And yeah, it's editing is incredibly important.
Tell people where they can find you before we go.
You can find me on my website at wesleysouthard.com. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm very, very easy to find. And I'm setting up an OnlyFans. It's not safe for work, so let's just put it like that. We're working on the content right now, but it's
Oh,
definitely
good. We'll definitely advertise that one way or the other. All right, man. Before we go, I want to remind everybody that our sponsor is the Dirty Deeds crime fiction series by Armand Rosamilia. It's a great series, up to 8 books, and again, I can't recommend it enough because I've read it myself and very much enjoy it. And it's one of those series that'll work for just about any type of crime fiction reader. Once you've read that, I think you're going to want to read more of Armand's work. So we appreciate everybody listening in, and I will talk to everybody again next week.